Hello, welcome to Opsrace training program. So we were discussing about the API. In previous episode, we look at the documentation and its importance. Today, we'll talk about the validation and completeness of the API. So let's say we have this create API. If we call this function, so it will create a new car and will return us the response, and a new ID is assigned to it. This is the registration number and everything. Usually, when developers are creating these APIs, they don't care about the alternate path, they just create everything, which is a happy path or success scenario. So, if something is not correctly provided, they do not handle it, and hence the application crashes because they haven't notified us. We just look at the Swagger example as well. There were no mentioning of the error responses or anything. But how the system will behave, let's say I just remove this last curly brace, how the system will behave. Let's try it, and we can see that the system is gracefully handling this error because this is not a valid JSON. So it says, please parser error, please make sure JSON is properly formatted. So I know that I take input as a JSON, so that's why I have cached a parser error on the JSON object, which generally transform this string into proper Java object, because this is a JSON format. So I have managed that. A good API must manage all these problem and throw proper error. Also, I'm telling them 303. So 400 bad requests could be for any reason. There could be thousands of issues that can cause 400 bad error. But what exactly is bad? So this is 303 the code. This is the application code. So whenever developers tell me that there is a 303 code, I know that the JSON is not properly formatted. Here is the developer message. We can also use a translator like a key error dot 303, and based on that we can show a translated message on the application, on the UI. This is the developer message so that developer can understand what is the issue. Let's say we just remove the model and we call the API, and our model is null. Now you have to think about it. If in a car, if model is important or not. If it is not important, then it's okay, but you got to ask this question as a QA, as a developer. You need to ask the business or the requirement engineering team if the model is mandatory or not. If it is like optional, then obviously we can try this. So as a QA, as a developer, you should try these alternate things, and you can try find out what are the fields which are not mandatory. So let's say I just delete this registration number as well, and let's call the API, and it's still accepting everything. So it's just creating an empty object without any registration number, without any make, model or feature. It's still accepting me, and this is the issue. This is a problematic API. This API is not complete. So as a developer or as a QA, you should ask the business, so what are the fields which are mandatory, and those should be if those fields are mandatory, then we must add them in the validation process. Okay, let's try one more thing. Let's remove these curly braces. So curly braces an object is mapped to a class. Let's send it. It says that JSON is not properly formatted. So there is some validation or there is some handling of the error, but no validation at all. I'm going to switch to the code so that you understand it, because it's very necessary for the completeness of API. This is a Java code, but I hope you can understand the concept very easily for the validation. So we see here, this is our function, this is our method. which requests the mapping car, we need to validate this. If car dot get registration number, so if this is null, if this value is null, or this is empty, car dot get registration number is empty, we need to throw error. So we have a custom exception, throw new bad request exception, and we can define here so that's how the processing will stop, nothing will proceed. If the registration number is missing, it will just throw the error. Similarly, we can add other validations as well here. So let's say our make is mandatory, and we have to use here get make. So this is a mandatory field, so we will say make of the car is mandatory. So that's how we are going to throw error. So we fail early if one field is null or missing, or it's not according to our requirement, it will just throw exception. So this exception will automatically be converted into proper response code. Let's see, let's recompile it. Okay, server is up. Let's send empty message again, and this time it says registration number is mandatory. Okay, I will this time pass a registration number, test code, and I will send it, and now it says that make of the car is mandatory. Okay, let's say I am passing make and some. Now it is accepting the object. We can even check if make is one of the if make is from one of the already predefined makes, then it should only accept that make. So this is just a junk value, but it's still better than providing null. And if I do not provide this, we can see here we are receiving a very specialized code. Make of the car is mandatory 3101. This is also an error. Let's say if I pass here something else, so I'm just trying to do some where I'm passing an unknown field. It won't accept it, but registration number won't be available as well. So registration number is not available, so we are seeing the developer message in both cases, and we are seeing that same code. So 3101 is basically a bad code or something like that. Let's look at here. Yeah, here we can see it. I have passed the error code 3101. This should be a constant value that should be used, because we do not code magic number. It leads to a lot of confusion. So whenever bad request happens, it just passes 3101. It's a generic error message for the bad request. If we want that the error should be specific, so that we understand why certain problem is happening. So I have an overloaded constructor, so we can use 31001, or we can use 45 if this is a registration number missing, 46 if make is missing. We can also use here for the model get model. I know this is a very bad code, but just to make things simpler, I'm coding here. So this is 47. So now every time an error is thrown, there would be a different code. Let's recompile this. Okay, let's test this code. Now we see here is the bad 40400 bad request, and what exactly is the problem? Its registration number is mandatory, so this is the developer message, whereas 45 is a very specific error code for the registration number. You can use these code, you can define them at a central place and define all the codes for different problem if it is necessary for your application, and you can then add translation based on the error code. So if the application, this is application error code, if it is 45, so you would have a translation against error dot 45 or something like that, which will basically translate to Arabic, English, French, German, or whatever that language is. But APIs are built for the API errors. Like here, the string is always in English, or most of the time it is in English, and this is for developer. This is not to be shown in the app, because if app is multilingual, then you would have a problem. And based on these error code, you can apply different alerts, different things as well. Let's pass this value correctly here, and if we send this, now we have another error and our code is changed as well. Let's pass make here. Now we have 47. I guess there was some problem. Yeah, I haven't changed here the model, but our error code has been changed. Our error code is updated 47. So if I pass all of them, then it will only allow this object to be created. So I have to perform all the validation. It's mandatory in order for the completeness of the API. So yeah, that's how we validate. We check everything. As a developer, it's your job, it's your duty. It is the duty of every developer, every QA, to validate each and every field, if that field makes sense or not. So let's send this. It has converted it to values. If it is acceptable, not acceptable, you have to ask the business what are the things that are important. Some validation may not make sense. It's not very mandatory. Okay, so for this thing, this is too much. So I think we can extract this method. We can separate this method here. Validate car. Okay, our method, our function should have one responsibility, and it is supposed to save the car, and there's a lot of validation, etc. So move it to another class, because when you see this functionality, when you are trying to read the business, you understand that first it will validate the car, then it will assign some number. This is just saving. This is just a fake saving, because I'm just using hash map to save the car based on the ID. But it is a best idea that you create a class called car validator and or add all this functionality in that. Okay, this is another bad practice. This code is very repetitive and it's very dirty, so we can just use we can extract a new method from here, refactor extract method, and I just want to name it is empty. Okay, it is asking me if I want to accept this one or this one, so I will just use here value. No, it is not accepting, so I will just accept the signature, replace. So it has automatically replaced all of them occurrences where I was doing the same thing. So instead of car, we can call it value. Just replace these values here and value. So if a string is null or string is empty, it will return the boolean response, and based on the boolean response I will use that. Again, this must be in a utility class. This must be somewhere in the utility class. So we can create here utils. Okay, and we'll just move this method to that utility class here. Instead of private, I will make public. Yeah, now it can be used by anyone, whoever needs that. Now it's asking me like I do not understand it. I will just use the static import here, or I can use value utils dot is empty. So both are accepted in Java because it will automatically create an import here. Where is, yeah, here the static import, but you can use this method. Okay, and also this code needs to go to its own validator function, car validator. It should be there. We can still see like there is some repetitive code, so we can just convert this thing into we can extract a method static. Why a static? Because I want to move it somewhere. Public static validate string. So here will be the value. Here I want to specify the code. Here I want to specify the message. I can create multiple overloaded functions as well. So here I will just simplify this thing. If value is empty, throw bad request exception with code and with some message. So that's how we can use everywhere. Instead of using this, we will use validate string here, and we need to remove all the code. Validate string car model. Okay, we can see here we have simplified it. Okay, we can also simplify this one as well. So there is no limit of simplifying thing. It's basically the coding practice. You keep doing thing, you can simplify more and more so that your code looks cleaner, neater. When you are debugging, when you are reviewing the code, you don't have to see the validation. You know that this is validating the car, here is some other functions performing. So if you know like you have to check validation, you just have to jump into that, and you see things like how the validation is happening, how the error codes are happening. So these should be very isolated in separate classes. Just for sake of this video, I have created everything in the same class, but this should go the validator. There should be a car validator, there should be a value validator, which is basically a separate class which will have this method, other integer, string, float or double number which are being validated. So you will call here class car validator dot validate or check. It will just check if there is any issue. If there is a problem, it will just throw the exception. Once the exception is thrown, the rest of the code won't be executed, and this exception will then be cached by the global exception handler, where it will transform it to proper error message, so that you can see that error here if we do not pass any specific value. So yeah, that's how we would be able to see all the errors that we have defined. We can overload as much as possible, we can simplify things as much as possible for the sake of completeness. This is the minimum that as a validator we should provide. So we can overload this method where it just take the value and give the generic code and generic message. If you want to use the specific one, you can specify the code here and the message here. I hope this makes sense, and from now onward you will look at everything that is being called in the response in the header. This is the raw, this is the preview, this is the pretty where it just changes the color, etc. Everything you will look at how your connection is happening, where the DNS lookup is taking time, where the transfer is taking time, and all those things. We would be looking at each and every API very carefully, understand that how much time it is taking, how much size it is taking, what is the response code it is returning. These all are very important. As a developer or as a QA, you need to ensure the completeness of the API in all aspects, and that is the only API. Rest is just an assignment from 6th or 7th grade student. I hope you will understand this. I hope you will try to make changes in your future APIs, in your previous API. You will try to refactor them. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye. See you in the next session.